Everything is Fine by Great 78. Chapter 13. Magic. On the massive screen in front of the three of them, the sorting hat sat low on young Draco's head, considering for a long time which Hogwarts house to sort him in. Sitting there on the sofa with Hermione and Weasley, Draco started to get nervous. In his recollection of this moment, it had not taken nearly so long. Finally, the sorting hat spoke. "Better be Gryffindor!" Weasley laughed as Draco stared dumbfounded at the screen. "Well, this should be good." The Weasley chuckled. In quick succession, moving images danced across the screen. Young Draco, single-handedly bringing down a troll, alone in a Hogwarts loo. Draco, stabbing the head of a gargantuan basilisk, alone in a dark chamber, far below the castle. Draco, standing alone by himself, and casting a Patronus charm, the large silvery dragon driving away countless Dementors with ease. A slightly older-looking Draco, the sole winner of the Triwizard Tournament. And, finally, Draco shouting an incantation, a jet of green light blasting from his wand across a crowded room to strike Lord Voldemort directly in the chest. The other wizard fell, hard, to the ground, and the crowd cheered wildly around them. "What the absolute fork is this shirt?" Draco muttered, shaking his head minutely in complete disbelief. "Oh my, Jim," Hermione breathed. "What was that total pile of dragon shirt we just watched?" Weasley said, his voice rising in anger as he stood from the sofa, pointing accusatorially at Draco. "What did you do? Did you confront someone? Just make all that up for fun?" Draco found his voice, his hackles rising. "I assure you, Weasley, I did no such thing. I had zero interest in being the chosen one."
"Where was Harry?"
Hermione wailed. Weasley turned to her to offer comfort, sitting closely at her side and putting an arm around her, patting her shoulder. "It's all right, Hermione. We'll get this sorted," Weasley promised. Draco struggled to maintain his sense of control.
"How do you propose we sort this, Ron? Just in case you've forgotten, Pansy Parkinson is here as a male octogenarian. There's a person calling themselves Luna Lovegood who looks like the act of sex personified, living in your house. I am apparently a vegetarian who believes in divination of all of a sudden, and Draco is the saviour of the wizarding world. None of this is right."
Hermione flung herself to the sofa, wiping at her eyes. The clock chimed behind them. Draco sighed. "It's 6 o'clock. It's been a long day. Weasley, Pansy is coming tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. We were going to extend the invite to you, even before we knew about all of this with Ariel and her suspicions. As far as we know, we're the only people from Hogwarts. We need to stick together. Let bygones be bygones. Do you agree?" The red-haired man stood, pacing in front of the screen where the image was frozen, the green jet of light streaming from the wand of Hawthorn to strike the chest of the world's most dangerous wizard. Finally, Weasley came to a stop and turned to look at Draco. "Fine. We work together to figure this out. I still don't believe that the two of you are soulmates, but I'm willing to let the past stay in the past." Draco stuck out a hand, offering the other man a handshake, which Weasley took after a moment, with barely concealed distaste. Hermione smiled at both of them. Her earlier tears about Potter's apparent absence from their lives now bittersweet at the prospect of a truce between Draco and the weasel.
"Right. Let's work on figuring this out tomorrow," she said brightly.
Draco's hopes rose at her comment. Perhaps she meant that she was willing to resume their earlier activities once the other wizard left. Finally, thankfully, Weasley walked out of the door, promising to return the next afternoon. Draco turned from closing the door, looking at Hermione hungrily. He crossed the room in 3 steps, gently holding her around the waist. "Where were we?" he murmured into her hair. Her hands came up to his biceps, gripping his arms firmly. She wasn't pushing him away, but she wasn't drawing him closer, either.
"Draco, I've been thinking."
Oh no, he thought. This was the death knell of every relationship he had ever attempted in his short life. I've been thinking, and we're not compatible. I've been thinking, and I'm just not ready. I've been thinking, and I'm moving to Alaska to teach wolves to dance. He'd heard them all, but all of them were really and truly saying the same thing. I've been thinking, and I've just realized that I don't want to be with a former Death Eater. He dropped his hands from her body as though it had burned him. "You've been thinking, and you don't want to be with me," he mumbled with a sneer. "Don't worry, Granger, I understand completely."
"No, Draco, that's not it at all."
And now she did pull him closer, her fingers gripping hard to re-engage him.
"I was just going to say, I've been thinking, and if we're going to do this, I want to do it right. I don't want us to rush straight to the bedroom, if that's all right."
He smiled in sweet relief, a hopeful feeling rising in his chest. The brain pixies had been standing on the edge of a cliff, readying themselves to jump off, but were now celebrating giddily. Romance. Courting. Wooing. This he could do. An hour later, they were dressed in their best. Draco's navy suit and crisp white Oxford were complemented by his saddle-brown shoes and pink pocket square. Hermione's off-the-shoulder shell-pink dress, white pashmina, and gold heels shimmered under the gas lamps as they stepped out onto the pavement out front. Draco tucked her arm around his. "I hope you like the finest banana toppers the good place can create. I got reservations at the most exclusive restaurant in town. It's called the Top Banana, and it's in one of the high-rises on the rooftop."
"How does one go about securing reservations in heaven?"
Hermione inquired, slipping her free hand around his bicep. Draco smiled. "I have friends in low places," he said, holding his other hand parallel to the ground near his thigh to indicate Dobby. They arrived to an empty restaurant, save for Dobby, who presented them with personalized small plate menus once they were seated. Hermione looked over her menu and gasped.
"Draco, there's no banana mentioned at all."
Her eyes were wide with astonishment. He smiled. "I took a page out of Weasley's spell book and asked Richard to shut the place down for the night and change up the menu. It's 100% normal food. Nary a yellow fruit in sight." The look she gave him across the table, smouldering, ravenous. It was worth every bit of grumbling and rancor that Draco had put up with from Richard Pryor to make this happen. After dinner, they walked towards the lake. There, on the sandy beach, they encountered Dobby once again, who looked pleased to see them, as always.
"I have your special request ready, Draco,"
the diminutive elf said. With a chime and a snap of his small elf fingers, a silvery white staircase appeared next to the lake, building itself quickly from seemingly nothing. It reached high, high into the air, ending in an opaque, fluffy cloud that seemed to glow a soft blue-white in the moonlight. Hermione gasped, then looked at the stairs uneasily. I don't really care for heights. Remember, nothing here in the good place will hurt you, Dobby said. The sleeve of his jumper turned yellow. All right, she answered doubtfully. Draco held out an arm, which she gripped tightly. Despite the fact that from the ground it looked as though there were easily 1,000 stairs, they only climbed for 20 seconds or so before they reached the top of the staircase. Once they passed the cloud barrier, the staircase ended. Where are we? Hermione breathed, looking around at the swirling vapour of the cloud in which their feet stood. Overhead, stars twinkled, so close it almost looked as though they could reach out and touch them. Soft music filtered from everywhere around them. I asked Dobby if there was anywhere that I could take you dancing. I asked for somewhere magical. Apparently this fit the bill, Draco said, with a rakish smile. It does. She smiled back at him. He took her in his arms, and they began to move together. Just as they had that night in Weasley's house, they moved with a fluidity and duality that Draco could scarcely believe was possible. They seemed to be made for each other, so in tune with each other and so perfect together. One melody flowed into the next, and they lost track of time, but never grew tired. Just as they had at dinner, conversation came easily. They discussed old times, new concerns, hypotheticals, and stories of childhood. Hours passed without them realizing it. Finally, as one edge of the cloud turned pink with the sun's morning rays, Draco suggested that they go home. They descended the staircase, finding the little village empty as they walked to their house in the early dawn hours. When they reached their front door, Draco turned to her, tucking one errant curl back behind her ear. He picked up her right hand in his right and kissed the back of it, bowing to her. I had the loveliest time with you, Miss Granger. I hope you'll allow me to take you out again. He looked up then, molten silver eyes staring deeply, suggestively, into hers. Her copper eyes looked just as they had at the restaurant, wild and glowing with desire. As he raised up out of his bow, she launched herself at him, throwing her arms around his neck and kissing him fully on the lips. After only a moment of surprise, he returned the kiss in full, and then some. She reached for the door handle, turning it and pulling him inside by his waistband, backing into the room, which had been mercifully silent since Dobby had turned off the screen. Fuck. It's times like these I really miss apparition, Hermione said longingly. Come on. She kicked off her gold sandals, tossing the pashmina onto the sofa as she passed, and missing the sofa entirely. When they reached the end of the corridor, going towards the bedroom, she turned back to him and pushed his suit jacket off of his shoulders. Hermione, believe me when I say I'm not trying to talk you out of anything, but I thought you wanted to take it slow, he said carefully. He didn't want to ruin this by pressuring her to move too fast. I've changed my mind, she said, copper eyes burning bright at him in the semi-darkness. That was all the information that Draco needed. Towing off his shoes as he unbuttoned and ripped off the Oxford shirt, he grabbed her by the waist and hauled her close. Fuck, Hermione. You have no idea how long I've waited for this. Years I've wanted you. My Jim, you are so gorgeous, he said, pushing the pink dress down her arms as she unbuckled his belt and unbuttoned his trousers. She pulled away to look at him directly in the eyes. What do you mean, years?
Hermione, I've had a crush on you since at least our 3rd year.
His words were muffled as he spoke, whilst softly nibbling at her neck.
What? I could never tell you back then, of course. But rest assured that this is a dream of mine fulfilled tonight,
Draco said, bending at the waist as his mouth trailed kisses down her décolletage, sucking small love bites into her soft skin. His hands left the dress at her hips and came back up for her bra, his fingers slipping just under the shoulder straps. Hermione pushed his trousers down to his Adonis belt, then lightly pushed her chest into his face. She murmured, "Take off my clothes." Suddenly she was naked under him, and he moaned deeply as her warmth and scent overtook him. Draco's body curled towards her, his cock aching to be closer to her.
"Fuck, you're so amazing, Hermione,"
he said, picking her up into his arms to carry her to the bedroom. He laid her down on the bed and crawled next to her, his free hand caressing the lovely curls of her hair as they spread out on the duvet.
"I want you so badly, love."
She leaned up to kiss him then, her tongue pushing its way between his lips, exploring, possessing him. Her fingers trailed along the smooth muscles of his abdomen, outlining the curve of them with her fingernails, in a way that made every nerve ending in his body come to life. One of his thighs moved between hers, his knee coming to rest just below her cunt. She began to grind down on him, seeking friction to ease her want. Draco worried that he might unravel too quickly from sheer lust at the thought of her getting herself off, even as his hand moved from her hair, down her side to grip her bum and help her grind more precisely against him. After a moment, her legs relaxed as she sighed, temporarily sated. That would never do, he thought. No witch had ever left his bed without complete and utter satisfaction. His long fingers trailed around her hip, the pads of them dancing lightly along her slit, already so slick with her arousal. Near the bottom he pressed in, lightly, holding his breath in agonized anticipation as he felt her heat and need for him. Her arousal was unmistakable, undeniable, just as he knew his need was for her. She could have no doubt how much he wanted her, as his sizable cock pressed hard into her outer thigh. His fingertips teased her clit, then swiped low near her entrance to gather more slick, then back up again. He repeated this circuit slowly, lazily, watching for her reaction as she furrowed her brow in concentration. Her hips lifted from the bed, chasing her satisfaction, but she would need to earn it from his mouth first, Draco decided. He sat up slightly and inched his way slowly down her body, doing his level best to maintain his hand's pattern of up, then down, then back up again. His eyes were locked on the beauty of her sex, how needy and wanton she seemed for him. The sight of it tore a growl from his throat. Go slow, he reminded himself, even as his aroused pixie brain chanted at him to hurry up, hurry up. Now he was lying with his face just over her sex, and the heady scent of her was driving him spare. He looked up hungrily, expecting to find her still insensate in her throes of desire. Instead, she had risen up to her elbows to watch him, watching her. Her gorgeous copper eyes were ablaze, pupils wide to take in his every movement. Her lips were parted as she took in tiny sips of air, cheeks pink with a maelstrom of emotions and sensations. she was beautiful. And whilst Draco was uncertain if his heart still beat as it did on Earth, he felt that if it did, it might just beat out of his chest at any moment. He lowered himself to the bed once he was between her legs, resting on his abdomen as his arms snaked under her thighs. Never breaking eye contact with her, his hands pushed under her bum as his elbows bent to rest on the bed and hold her apex up to his face. Slowly, he brought her body closer to his mouth, and his mouth closer to her gorgeous cunt, softening his lips and tongue as they met her. He licked a broad, flat stripe up her center, then back down. Her feet dropped, toes curling and heels digging into the mattress as she arched and shrieked her delight. Gods, she was amazing, Draco thought, as it was his turn to seek friction, his throbbing cock pressing into the mattress below him. His tongue continued its ministrations, a slave to the delectable sounds of her ecstasy. When she was quiet, he endeavoured to do better the next time. When she said, "Again!" he fought to recreate the sensation exactly. When she cried out in joy, he greedily accepted her praise. As he licked her, gorging on the divinity of her body, Draco had a most random thought. Everyone that they'd spoken to had one small detail wrong about the good place. They all said that only the things found in the restaurants tasted truly perfect. But they did not know the perfection of Hermione's exquisite body. She had dissolved into mostly babbling, but in a matter of a few moments he could tell that she was close. His tongue thrust into her, then back to her clit, to tease and lick once more. He pushed his face as gently as he could against her, like a man possessed, wanting to drown in her beauty, never wanting to let her go. Hermione's thighs squeezed at the sides of his head, and her hands came down to his hair, pulling him even closer, if possible. Then she was arching, taut and straining, tightening as her orgasm tore through her body and undulated within her, like a cresting ocean wave. Gently, he lowered her lower body back to the bed, panting with his exertion and his desire, as he sat up to look at her. She, too, seemed out of breath, staring up at him in wonder. "Oh, my Jim, Draco! I'm not trying to just stroke your ego here, but that was the singularly most amazing thing anyone has ever done for me, sexually, I mean," she said, still shaking her head in disbelief. "Was that just because it was here? Is sex always this amazing in the good place?" Draco laughed softly. I don't know, love. But I think if you weren't experiencing it like that on Earth, it was more than likely because of the shortcomings of the other person." He quirked an eyebrow at her as she giggled. "You might be right," she murmured, but did not elaborate. Instead, she reached up and drew his mouth down to hers, her tongue darting out to taste herself on his lips. His cock jolted hopefully between her legs, and she moaned needily and reached for his length. "Take off my clothes," he whispered, and she gasped and bit her lower lip as his warm length suddenly jutted free, no longer bound by his trousers. His entirely unblemished and unmarked arms held her tightly. "Is this all right?" he asked huskily. "Yes, 1,000 times yes," she giggled. The sensation he experienced as he entered her nearly caused him to weep in delirium. Her body surrounded him so perfectly with its heat and smooth friction, it made him forget to breathe for a moment. Then, when he remembered to, it was in a gasp. With a moan, he sank to the hilt inside of her, lowering his lips to hers to swallow her gasp of shocked pleasure at the sensation. Holding her tightly round the waist, he rolled them over, their bodies maintaining the close connection perfectly. She sat up now, her eyes wide, and Draco hoped, that the feelings of amazement and wonder he was experiencing were present in her eyes, looking at him as well. He wasn't sure what she was thinking, but he was past the point of thinking properly himself. Every fibre of his being was focused on the radiance of her, on the feel of her soft caresses with her hands on his chest, in the needy timbre of her voice as she called out his name. He focused on the smooth creaminess of her breasts and stomach under his own hands as she moved against him, chasing her own release, and the taste and scent of her that remained on his lips. Who needed a wand to create magic, he thought. They had certainly achieved it all on their own, tonight.
Thank you for listening to Everything is Fine by Great78. If you enjoyed this story and would like to read more like it, please find me on Archive of Our Own or follow my Spotify channel, Silver and Copper.